Hi there and welcome to a short video explaining how to carry out the compare questions in the Higher Politics course. We're going to have a look at the 2017 compare question, so if you don't have that open already, pause the video, find the 2017 compare question in your Inquiry Skills booklets and then unpause. Okay, so the compare questions are relatively straightforward. There's only two sources. You have to make 3 points of comparison between the two sources and then make an overall conclusion. The question's always going to tell you what it's looking for you to make your points of comparison about. In this case, it wants you to compare the cases for direct and representative democracy. Now ideally what you'll do at the end is come to an overall conclusion, in this case about which one makes the strongest case. How we lay this question out I'll come to in a minute, but for now this question's worth 8 minutes, therefore eventually you should be able to complete it in around about 18 minutes. This comes from paper 2 where you have an hour and 15 minutes in total to answer 2 questions. So this one's usually the question that people prefer to do first, get it out of the way. You can do it in around about 15 to 18 minutes. Things to remember with this, you have to use both sources. As you'll see in a moment, it's quite difficult not to use both sources. You have to make a point from source A and then find a corresponding point from source B to compare it to. And we're going to go through a quick way to do that in the final exam in a minute. Once you make that point of comparison between the two sources, you have to make a detailed conclusion, more or less explaining in a bit more detail what that point of comparison is. Things to be thinking about is the two sources have a similar view, a different view, what is the main thing that they're trying to say. And then we'll come to the overall conclusion in a minute or two. So let's look at this 2017 compare question. This one's all about democracy, as I say. So the first thing we have to do, looking at source A, in this case the case for democracy, is have a look at the paragraphs. This one has 3 different paragraphs. Each should be about some different aspect of direct democracy. So with a highlighter, have a look through source 1. Now what we should notice in source 1, it's all sort of talking about the same thing. It's mentioning a few different pieces of information about where direct democracy is used, ancient Greece and Switzerland. Goes on to talk a bit about America, but if you notice the bits here that I've highlighted, it allows us to build this case that direct democracy works at a local level. So that's paragraph 1. What I'd like you to do now is pause the video and then with a different colour of highlighter go through paragraph 2, try and work out what the paragraph is about, make a wee annotation next to it, then do the same thing for paragraph 3. Pause now and have a go. Okay, you should have been through paragraphs 2 and 3 now and have a rough idea what the paragraphs are talking about. So paragraph 1 we said was all about how direct democracy works best at a local level. Paragraph 2, if you can see there's 1 or 2 pieces of information that sort of jump out and tell you what this paragraph is talking about. Come at the start of the paragraph, it talks about how direct democracy creates a more informed electorate, more politically knowledgeable. This is because if you think about referendums, there's only one thing, there's only one question on the table, so people tend to get a lot of information about that one issue and therefore know quite a bit about it. If you think about the Scottish independence referendum 2014, that was the only thing that was on the ballot paper, so people did have a lot of information and knowledge about it. You can see beneath there's more examples about Quebec and all that, but the main thing we're doing at the moment is trying to work out what this paragraph is talking about. So it argues that direct democracy creates a more informed and politically aware electorate. In source 3, onto something completely different, there's some words here that should jump out at you, but in source 3 they're talking about this idea of legitimacy, which we've spoken about in class. But direct democracy creates decisions which are seen as more legitimate because the people who are affected by those decisions are involved in it, and therefore these decisions should be accepted as being fair. So 3 paragraphs, 3 different things. Now what we do is we go on to source B. You'll notice that in source B there's 4 paragraphs as opposed to 3. That can happen. Sometimes there'll be uneven numbers of paragraphs and we just have to go through the same process, looking through, thinking, what is this paragraph about? Now we're at a bit of an advantage because we know that we're making comparisons that the question designed to do that. We've already identified 3 things from source A, so the best thing to do to complete this question a bit quicker is to be going through and thinking, well, what paragraph seems like it might be mentioning something that I've seen in source A already. So let's have a go at doing that. Looking at the first paragraph, scanning through that, quite short. It seems just to be describing what representative democracy is, and there's nothing really in there that's jumping out at me that I've seen in source A, so I'm going to leave that one for now. On to the second paragraph, looking for keywords that are jumping out. First one I see there is legitimacy, and you remember in source A, we had that paragraph at the very bottom that I've highlighted green, where they talk about direct democracy creating legitimate decisions. So go for that, I'll make that one green and go on. You can see more information about how source B is arguing that representative democracy is also producing legitimate forms of decision making, but maybe for a different reason. So I'll pop that in my wee annotation at the side. Representative democracy also creates legitimate decisions. Jumping down to the third paragraph, talks about a division of labour as a result of representative democracy, meaning that unlike direct democracy, not everybody has to be involved in politics and making these political decisions and finding out information about them. So there's a division of labour, freeing people up to do other stuff. People don't get bogged down with the details like they have to do under direct democracy. Going further down, you can see elected representatives act on people's behalf, so they have more time and therefore more expertise, and can therefore produce better quality legislation. So we go for that one. In yellow, representative democracy creates better legislation because people are more informed, and you can start to see how that is very similar to the thing we made yellow before about this better informed citizenry making decisions. That leaves us with one paragraph left. We'll double check it, but I think it's quite straightforward to match up which one it's going to be talking about. But the talk down here about direct democracy is not only seen as undesirable in many situations, but it's also seen as impossible. And it talks about how the size of these countries means that direct democracy just wouldn't be practical at all. You can see there at the bottom it kind of summarises that. Representative democracy ensures that legislation can be made and passed effectively and practically in modern society. So we go for that one in blue. If you go through that, you should see that there's 3 quite distinct arguments. You can see how the paragraphs match up together. There they are side by side. And this is usually what you'll see in a compare question, that a paragraph matches another paragraph. So that's kind of the main bit of work in the question of finding the paragraphs that go together. Then what we've got to do is just plug it into our template, and then we build this up to try and get the 8 marks. So I'm going to show you the first paragraph, how that would go together, looking at our blue section here about the effectiveness of direct democracy. Now remember, it does ask us to make these 3 points, that's why we found 3 things. We'll come to the overall conclusion in a moment, but we're comparing the cases for direct and representative democracy. So we lay it out just like this. And you do have this template in your compare booklets. Source A shows that direct democracy is seen as being practical at a local level, whereas source B shows that the size of the countries today limit the effectiveness of direct democracy. So I've taken 2 direct lifts from the sources, so one from source A, one from source B. You'll also notice that I've used a good word there, whereas. This is flagging up to the examiner that I've got a contrasting piece of information. A really important thing to remember with this section as well is that you must say where you got this piece of information. The reason for that is we want to flag up to the examiner that we have identified something from both sources. And I always like to make it a quote at the beginning, just to really reinforce that with the marker, that we've pulled this from the source, that we're comparing 2 things from sources A and source B. Now that would get you 1 mark, and we'll talk about how the marking for that works in a second. This next bit that I've just dropped down here, big long bit, is a bit where we're sort of expanding on these 2 quotations and explaining the difference between the 2 points of view from source A versus source B. So take a moment, have a look, have a read through this, and you can see how I've built on that contrast that I've highlighted from source A and source B. Okay, so it's the most desirable system of democracy for modern complex societies. Remember, I'm comparing the case. So far, I seem to be building the case that representative democracy is maybe a bit better because it's more practical than direct democracy. Now, I mentioned the marks already. You get 1 mark for making 2 comparisons, to identifying 2 pieces of information that compare properly between source A and source B. And then your second mark comes from that extended explanation, a bit like analysis, where you're pointing out why they're different and comparing the cases like the question asked you to do. So far with this paragraph, we've got 2 marks out of the 8. Now, on your Inquiry Skills front page, you've got this sort of order in which you do things. So far, we've made a point from source A and compared it to a point in source B. We've got our mark for that. We've then done this next bit where we're kind of doing the extended conclusion based on that point of comparison. We've talked about how maybe one type of democracy is maybe superior to the next one, and that's got us our second mark. You'll see here we've got to do this whole thing 3 times, so we've got 2 more paragraphs to put together from the sources. Our next one, if we take that paragraph we highlighted a different colour, source A shows that direct democracy creates a more informed electorate and a politically knowledgeable group of citizens. I'm sure you can pull out the next bit from source B that we can lift to compare that to. We'd go, however, source B shows that most of the general public have no interest in research and policy. So these 2 things definitely match up together. They've showed the marker that we've engaged in both sources, and we've got a different word this time pointing out that there's a contrast. So there's our first mark in this paragraph. Then we go into that extended detail, explaining why these 2 things are different, and pointing out that under direct democracy, all the citizens are fully involved in decision making. I've given that example from the source of the 2014 Scottish independence referendum. Remember, we're only taking information from sources at this point. In Inquiry Skills questions, we don't want to be adding in any of our own background knowledge. I've used however again to point out the contrast. I just expanded a bit on the point above that representative democracy creates higher quality legislation as the representatives are more informed than ordinary citizens. And this is gaining me my second mark. So far, 2 paragraphs, we've got 4 marks, so we're halfway to getting full marks on the question. We've got 1 more paragraph of comparison to do, and then our overall conclusion at the end. So go back to your grid for how the allocation of marks goes. This is where we are. One more paragraph to go. So we've used our blue, we've used our yellow. So the next one to have a look at was the one we made green in source A. This comment about direct democracy ensuring that decisions are legitimate. You'll remember that source B also argues that its type of democracy, representative democracy, creates legitimate decisions as well. So what I'd like you to do is pause the video, and I'm going to get you to try and write out that final paragraph by yourself, comparing the green bits we've highlighted in the source. Okay, if we've done this now, you should have your 3 paragraphs. You should be sitting at around about 6 marks. So the only thing that's left to do is do an overall conclusion. Now every conclusion is going to be different. There's no way to kind of template a conclusion out for you, because it's going to really depend what the question's about and what the sources are about and what you've written above. So in this case, I've argued that the case for representative democracy is stronger. Now that first sentence is one of the most important ones because I've answered the question. I've made an overall conclusion based on those 3 paragraphs I've written above about what the question asked us to do. And the question asked us, remember, to compare the cases for democracy. So straight away I've done that. In one sentence, the case for representative democracy is stronger. I then have to just go on to explain why I'm making that decision. So I've said that representative democracy has this higher quality legislation. Remember, we said that people making decisions are the ones that are really focused on it. Unlike in direct democracy where everybody's sort of involved, it's not realistic to expect everybody to have that same level of information and research in the issue. Whereas in representative democracy, you've got fewer people, and they're the people that want to go and do that. so we get higher quality laws as a result. I also say that just at the end, to sum it up, that this makes a better system to use than direct democracy. So sort of sandwiching my conclusion, telling them the answer, the case where representative democracy is stronger, and then my reason why, and then an overall statement at the end. And that's it. That would be 8 marks on the compare question. And you would do that by doing these 3 paragraphs and then the overall conclusion at the end. And the first few times you do this, it will take you a bit longer than 18 minutes, but that's okay. You remember that as you go, you practice these questions, the more you do them, and the more feedback you get by handing them in, the faster you get and the more accurate your comparisons will be. Always remember as well, you can do your red line technique by drawing the red line when you run out of time after 18 minutes. You keep doing this as you progress with the questions. Eventually the red line is going to appear at the end of your answer. Also, should remember that this is another opportunity for feedback from yourself. If you think about all these things we talk about in class, but how long it takes you to write these answers after you've done them a couple of times gives you good information about how much time you should be devoting to practicing these questions. Okay, so that's you. Make sure you've had a go at completing that 2017 compare question and you've got a full answer in class. If you're feeling comfortable and confident with how you do these questions, pick a new one out of your booklet, set the timer, and have a go at following it just using nothing but your template in your booklet. Okay, good luck.